Now call to order the June 3rd, 2020 meeting of the Gary Common Council. At this point, we will begin our meeting with prayer. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your goodness and your mercy. We ask that you will bless our city, our state, country, and world. We pray for all those who are suffering with coronavirus, its side effects, and the deaths that have resulted in this community and around the world. Please put your protection, your hands of protection all around us. We pray for the family of Mr. George Floyd and all of those who have suffered such brutality. Pray for peaceful demonstrations, mutual understanding, and growth in our humanity as a people. We pray for this council meeting that we will be led with wisdom, civility, and mutual understanding in the best interest of the city of Gary, its citizens, who are counting on us to lead. In your name we pray. Amen.
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 This time we'll have our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We're certainly happy to be back here for our June 3rd council meeting. Prior to the roll call, I just want to remind the public that our meetings are accessible via Facebook on our Gary Common Council page. Please like our Gary Common Council page so that you will be able to get alerts when we're having various council meetings and committee meetings and other community programs so that you will know what is going on. At this time, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilwoman Atkins. Here. Councilwoman Atkins.
Here. She can't hear me.
You're muted.
Here.
Councilman Brewer. Councilman Brewer.
Here.
Councilwoman Brown.
Present.
Councilwoman Caldwell.
Here.
Councilman Godwin.
Present.
Councilman Lay.
Here.
Councilman Weatherspoon.
Here.
Councilman Williams. Councilman Williams. President Brown. Mr. President, there are 7 present, 2 absent.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With 7 members present and 2 absent, we have a quorum to conduct the business of the Gary Common Council. Council members, before you are the minutes of the May 19th, 2020 council meeting. Is there a motion to approve said minutes?
I move the approval of the minutes.
Councilman Lay has moved and
I second.
Councilwoman Brown has seconded. Any questions or discussions about the minutes? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins.
Yes.
Councilwoman Atkins.
Yes.
Councilwoman Atkins.
She said yes. I'm not sure if it's coming through.
It's not. Yeah, we can't hear it at all.
Are you using your headphones or? Oh, you want to try it again?
Can you hear me?
We can barely hear you.
She's gonna try the headphones. Can we proceed past Councilwoman Atkins and then come back?
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilwoman Atkins,
She is here in the chamber and they are working on it. Maybe for now, you want to just come around and say yes over here?
I'm sorry, guys. Yes?
and President
All
Guy.
right. Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With a vote of 7-0, the minutes of the Garrett Common Council, May 19, 2020 meeting are approved. This time we'll have assignment of pending ordinances and resolutions on first reading.
Mr. President, who is
Councilman Lay is
I'm sorry, go ahead. Who is the missing councilman other than Mr. Brown? There's no other missing councilman.
Has Councilman Williams joined us?
Yes.
Yes, he was on. I could see him. I don't know if he could talk, but I saw
Okay,
it.
I don't think
He
he
didn't
answered
call
the
his
roll
name.
call. Madam Clerk? you have
Mr. President.
Councilman-
Mr. President,
Councilman
I
Williams.
am-
recognized.
I am here. I was marked absent, but I am here. For some reason, I couldn't speak, but I am here.
Okay, thank you. So, Madam Clerk, please correct the record to reflect 8 members present and 1 absent.
Yes.
Thank you, Councilman Lay. At this point, Madam Clerk,
Chair.
is someone speaking?
Attorney Williams.
Attorney Williams is recognized.
Thank you. I only think it's appropriate to bring this up now as it may become an issue in the meeting. Earlier this week, Attorney Lay indeed provided me with a copy of the rules and regulations of the council, and it goes to the discussion we were having about whether it was permissible to strike or insert. Previously was unaware of that. I have read what he provided. It's in section 2-281. subsection C, which does allow for the procedure to strike or insert an item. It does not preclude amending by substitution as we do it, but I just want to correct that for the record, that is a permissible tool of the council in case that presents itself today. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Williams, and thank you, Councilman Lay.
Yes, Mr. President,
Councilman Lay?
I'd certainly commend him for taking a look. We're certainly good friends, but he acted very professional, and I believe he did it because he trusted what I had said earlier in the meeting. So, yes, I absolutely agree with what Attorney Williams has indicated. There are 3 ways to do it.
Thank you.
Councilman Java.
Councilman Brewer is recognized.
So a question for Attorney Williams. So if that situation comes about, if you do strike, sir, you're saying that you still need to move by substitution? I want to make sure we're clear going forward. How should we act if that should come again?
That's a good question. I'm actually happy you brought it up because I left some things out. No, the 3 are principles.
You're going out real bad.
Found in section.
Could you repeat that? I could barely get.
I think we lost him.
Attorney Williams, I think his
I'm
screen
here.
is frozen. Okay.
Yeah,
You want
we-
to try that again?
Can you all hear me?
Yes, it's a little muffled.
Okay, well, I'll try to push through it. The answer is no. Either of the 3 procedures are permissible. There can be a motion to strike, a motion to insert, or a motion for substitution. Also, it's important to note that before we move for substitution, we should inform publicly what exactly we intend to substitute prior to calling for the vote. That also was very clear in reading the section as well. You can use any of the three tools, depending, I would imagine a motion for substitution should be a major substitution. If you're completely reorganizing the structure of the ordinance, where if you're simply changing a dollar amount or changing a name, the more appropriate would be a motion to strike and a motion to insert. Now, in the rule, you have to first read how the ordinance is currently and how the ordinance will be once you insert or strike what you're intending to do. That was clear to me in reading that must be done first. I hope that explains it. If not, I can proceed.
Very clear for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
All right, thank you, everyone involved for that clarification. I know that issue comes up quite frequently, and so we want to make sure we're following the proper protocol. At this time, we will move forward with our assignment of pending ordinances and resolutions on first reading.
CPO 2020-30, an ordinance of the Gary Common Council creating the City of Gary Youth Council, sponsored by Linda Barnes Caldwell, Councilwoman of the 5th District.
So Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell has indicated to me that she would like this to be removed from the agenda. It's premature. And so is there a motion to remove CPO 2020-30 from the agenda?
Mr. President, I move that this ordinance sent back to the law department.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded by Councilman Lay. Any questions or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Dowling.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 8-0.
With a vote of 8-0, CPO 2020-30 is removed from tonight's agenda and referred back for review of the Law Department.
CPR 2020-07, a declaratory resolution of the Common Council of the City of Gary, Indiana, designating that a certain area of the City of Gary be established as the Broadway Loss Economic Revitalization Area, to which deductions from excess value may be requested by an applicant to the Common Council of the City of Gary pursuant to Indiana Code 6-1.1-12.1, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary, Councilman Michael A. Brown at large, City of Gary, Indiana Redevelopment Commission, and the City of Gary, Indiana Office of Community Investment.
Planning and Development.
Mr. President, ends the sign of pending ordinances and resolutions.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilman Brewer is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning and Development has CPR 2020-07. I approve this for reporting out to the council. Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Weatherspoon.
Weatherspoon.
I'm sorry, Councilman
Thank-
Weatherspoon.
Thank you. Yes.
Mr. President, majority of the Planning Committee has approved CPR 2020-07 for reporting out on first reading.
Thank you, Councilman Brewer.
Mr. President,
Councilman Brewer is recognized.
CPR 2020-07 has reported out for the record.
Thank you, Councilman Brewer. We also have a change to our committee structure that I would like to entertain. There is a request that Councilwoman Linda Barnes Caldwell will move from the Parks and Recreation Committee to the Investigation Committee. And in turn, Councilman Lay will move from the Investigation Committee to the Parks and Recreation Committee. I'd move that we make that change. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. President, I second that motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded by Council Members Lay and Weatherspoon. Any questions or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams, Councilman Williams,
Yes. Can you hear me?
and yes, and President Godwin.
Yes.
This President, vote is 8-0.
With a vote of 8-0, Councilwoman Linda Barnes Caldwell is hereby moved to the Parks and Recreation Committee, and Councilman Lay is moved to the, Councilman Lay is moved to the Parks and Recreation Committee, and Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell is moved to the Investigations Committee.
Mr. President,
Councilman Lay is recognized.
you need to appoint a chairperson for the investigative committee.
Thank you, Councilman Lay. I'd like to appoint Councilwoman Linda Barnes Caldwell as the chairperson for the Investigations Committee. Attorney Williams, do we need to have a vote for that, or is the appointment sufficient?
It's at the pleasure of the chair unless there's an objecting party of the council. So it's at the pleasure of the chair.
Thank you, Attorney Williams. Is there any objection? Seeing and hearing none, Councilwoman Linda Barnes Caldwell is appointed chairperson of the Investigations Committee. Thank you for that correction, Councilman Lay.
Mr. President,
Councilman Brewer is recognized.
I would just ask on the change here with the new sheet that will come out that it will have today's date on there, so that way everyone's updated with the new sheet.
Point very well taken, Councilman Brewer. I know that we're probably on version 4 at this point, and so I will ask our office manager to make the update on our committee list and to circulate that among all of the council members and relevant staff, both legislative and executive branch, so people will know to whom things should be addressed. All right. At this time, we will have our special and select. Any council members for special and select?
Mr. President?
Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell is recognized.
Good evening. Volunteers are needed for the cleanup for the Metro Little League field for Saturday, June 5th at 8 a.m. All volunteers are welcome. The address is 2145 Harrison Street. Please start at 8 a.m. Please come out and help clean the baseball field for the children for the upcoming season. Also, boards and commissions would like to make an appointment this time for the redevelopment board. At this time, I would like to make a motion to reappoint Adam Hall to the redevelopment board.
Second.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing and hearing
Mr.
none,
President,
Councilman Weatherspoon is recognized.
I just wanted to have a question here in reference to the process itself for selecting members. The committee meeting that we had, of course, we had all the applicants there at one time. And, one applicant was listening to the other. And, sometimes that could be rather intimidating, at least in the interviews that I have partaken in. Is that normally the process, or do we typically interview these people one at a time?
Due to the Zoom meeting, everyone was there. Normally, one person comes in the room. Well, no, we've had the meetings and others have sat there and listened, so yes.
Public meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Abstain.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes,
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, vote is 7 yes, 1 abstention.
With a vote of 7 yes and 1 abstention, the 2 existing members on the redevelopment commission are reappointed for another
it's not,
calendar.
It's just,
point of order, Mr. President.
Just one.
Just one was on that
Just
vote,
one.
only
I'm
one.
sorry. Adam Hall is reappointed for an additional year.
Okay.
Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell is recognized.
Mr. President, at this time, I would like to reappoint Jeremiah King to the redevelopment board.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. Any questions or discussion?
Just a very brief discussion. It appears that the mayor replaced all, or has placed all new members on the redevelopment. And certainly, I commend Councilwoman Caldwell for at least getting the most experienced people, the most recent experienced people, to be appointed back to the, have a slate code coming out, be appointed back to the redevelopment commission. I certainly will vote in the affirmative. I think that these are good appointments. We have people that certainly can assist all these new people coming on.
Thank you, Councilman Lay. Any other questions or discussion on the reappointment of Jeremiah King? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
abstain.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes,
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, vote is 7 yes, 1 abstention.
7 yes and 1 abstention. Mr. Jeremiah King is reappointed for 1 additional calendar year to the redevelopment board. Thank you, Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Brown is recognized.
I just have a question. Are our appointees to the redevelopment commission, are they only appointed for 1 year?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Brown.
Mr.
Any
President,
other, Councilman Williams is recognized.
I'd like to know, are we done with special and select?
No, yeah, we are still in special and, would you like to be recognized for special and select?
Yes, I would.
All right, Councilman Williams is recognized.
We, calling for all residents on the 52nd Block Avenue, on Washington going towards Madison to come out and help with that community cleanup on, with dumpsters located on Washington Street, 51st and Washington, Saturday, starting at 9 o'clock. There is a contact number, but I don't know if I should give that out during this time. Do you think it's wise to give it? The number is a young man's private phone number. He gave it to me, not to. I haven't received the flyer yet from him.
Well, can't you give them the office number?
Right.
Can't you give them your assistant's number?
Yes, I can. I'm going to give them, well, he just texted me. It's fine. 219-359-8533. His name is Julian Carr. We're looking for all volunteers.
Right. Thank you, Councilman Williams. Any other members for special and select?
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Atkins is recognized.
thank you. Just have a couple announcements. There is also a 4th District Community Cleanup going on this upcoming Saturday, which is June 6th in the Ironwood area. The meetup spot will be at Ironwood Park, starting at 10 a.m. There will be dumpsters there, but the main goal is for us to rehab the actual park and then also the surrounding areas right along 23rd and 24th Avenue. Also, I wanted to say that I appreciate those individuals who have signed up for the Grass is Greener initiative. Those who have signed up, residents should have received a call by today informing them of what day your lawn service will commence next week. If you have not received a phone call, please make sure that you reach out to my administrative assistant, who is Ms. Karen Lane. The contact number is 219-881-1315. Also, on Friday, Family Life Community Center will be hosting a unity gathering, which will commence at 5:30 p.m. With the climate that's currently going on within the region, across the nation, Minister LaWanna Clemens is hosting this event in an effort to bring the community together. So he's asking for all residents to join him at 5:30 on Friday. The address is 565 Massachusetts. And again, if you have any specific questions related to that, you can also call Ms. Lane, my administrative assistant, for more info. Lastly, I have actually connected to Ms. Ola Moores, and this is a plea to my fellow colleagues. She is asking that we assist the census team in getting additional support to improve our current tracking. So just to give you guys some quick stats, from last week to this week, we have averaged a response rate of about 44%, which is substantially lower than what our target is. And so they are requesting that council members align with the census team from Gary to reach out to the constituents within our respective areas. The 4th district specifically, I have been able to do some analysis utilizing the census tracts within our district, and we are actually tracking closer to 20%. So we have a lot of work. So residents, so that you can understand the importance of the census numbers are utilized by lawmakers and federal agencies to devise plans for school, new school construction, lunch programs, any federal funding related to service, and then health service from a federal level. So your SNAP benefits, any grants, Head Start, if you have kids that go through the Head Start program, all of the information related to how funding is located across the nation is tied to the census track and the reporting that we do every 10 years. So it's very important for the city of Gary to come out in numbers. Currently, right now, the way that you can submit your responses is online. There is also a telephone number that you can call, but I'm going to give you the online information right now. So you can use the website mycensus2020.gov to go ahead and report your household information. If you do not still have your product code, which was sent in the mailer back in March, you can still fill it out online. You do not need that information. There is a link that says, I do not have my product code. And then you can follow the prompts to still submit the information respective to your residency. So just want to stress the importance that we are tracking behind as a city. I'm not sure, I think the administration has some programs that will be launching in the upcoming weeks in terms of how do we go door to door safely. But there is an option for you to do it online. That's it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman Atkins. A lot of helpful information.
Mr. President.
Any other, Councilwoman Brown is recognized.
I want to say how much I agree with Councilwoman Atkins as it relates to the importance of reporting the census. When we did the census 10 years ago, we were undercounted. I worked with Councilman Lay, and he and I got some information from NERC that let us know what our numbers are, but we were grossly undercounted. And I just know that it's extremely important. Now, I don't know if people understand how important it is that we're counted. And so I need to, and I have not done that, but I need to do something in my district to make sure, and not just necessarily in my district, we need to do something all over the city to make sure that we're counted, because it's extremely important. And I don't know, I mean, with the COVID and all the other things that have been going on, I think we've kind of lost track on where we need to be on the census, and it is so important. As I said, 10 years ago, we were undercounted, and we need to make sure that we get as many people counted as we possibly can. So, I mean, I agree with Councilwoman Atkins. Whatever I can do in my area to get people counted, I will certainly do the same. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman Brown. I echo the sentiments of both Council Members Atkins and Brown on the importance of the census and the dollars that flow to our area. Any other members for special and select?
Mr. President.
Councilman Brewer is recognized.
Thank you. And I'd like to send my condolences out to Bishop Sanders and the passing of his grandson that was funeralized on last week, Brian Sanders. Also want to say congratulations to all the nominees inside of the 2020 primary that won the nomination, Republican and Democrat. Congratulations to them and best wishes to them in November. Also, I know Mr. Dan Bakari is on the phone. We're online with us also too, but I received a lot of calls from I know we had a heavy downpour of rain last week, and if he can just address the issue with the sewer system throughout the city, because it was a measured amount of rain that we have not seen before in a long time. And, you know, even on my street, you know, we spent a tremendous amount of funds there to replace drainage there, which my street flooded tremendously. And I do understand what took place. But if he can just clarify what took place for the residents' sake, so they can understand what we're dealing with when we have these big downpours.
And might I just add, Councilman Brewer, 15th Avenue, I know it has a large pool of water in front of the NIPSCO building.
Yes.
And I've gotten a lot of complaints about that too. So, Mr. Bakari, are you on? I'm not sure. I see Mr. Bakari here.
Yes. If not, I can have it. Hopefully, we can have it addressed before the meeting is off.
That sounds good.
Mr. Chair.
Mayor is recognized.
So, yes, Mr. Chairman, we'll include a report at the end of the meeting.
All right, thank you, Mayor Prince.
And my other questions will be towards far as the recycling inside the city, what's taking place with it, with paving. All these are questions for the mayor here. The recycling, paving in the city, a crime update from the mayor, and also an update on the last homicide that we had inside the city also. That was very troubling just this past week. A broad daylight homicide taking place inside of one of our gas stations inside the city. But I'll wait till the mayor does his report, if that's okay, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Brewer. Any other members for special and select?
I have a couple, Mr. President.
Councilman Lay is recognized.
On May the 26th, matter of fact, I have a couple of things, and I'm going to make a suggestion to Councilman Brewer also. On May the 26th, several emails went back between you, Attorney Trent McCain, and Mr. Eric Reeves. It was concerning the seal of the city of Gary. And maybe I should stop here and absolutely commend Clerk Ms. Reynolds, Kim Reynolds, concerning the ordinance. We have located an ordinance.
Wait a minute,
and we started.
You said I was involved in I didn't send any emails about the seal.
No. I said I'm going to make a recommendation to you.
Oh, okay.
That's all. It has to do with the question. Well, I'll stop and do it now. It simply has to do with the various questions you ask of the mayor. I think, but in many cases, he certainly should be given the questions so that if he don't know the answer, he can look it up and get it out. If that's what you're after is answers. That was the only suggestion I was going to make. But going back, no, what I said was emails on the 26th, which I failed to read. I sent an apology to Mr. Godwin that I did not read the emails of May the 26th. I was preoccupied with something else, with the election, so I did miss it. But when I did read them on June the 1st, and I notified him at that time, I would respond. There is no issue around the city seal. In 1906, the seal, and it's called BAS Relief. To be honest with you, I had never seen the word. It has to do with sculpturing on the seal itself. At that point, E.H. Gary was on the seal. And what I'm commending the deputy clerk, chief deputy clerk about is we finally located a ordinance. This ordinance was passed March the 7th, 1972. The sponsor was Mr. Crump. I've had Thomas Crump. I've had several conversations with him, the last being today. The ordinance was passed saying that now the ladle pouring the steel is the city designed for its seal. The authority to do that lies under a very old statute. It's Burns 48-1407, which in fact again states that to change the seal. I noticed the mayor's using yellow. There's no restriction to color. So it would be like Mr. Brewer and I did discuss it. I told him no matter what you call his Lexus, no matter what you paint it, it's still the same model Lexus. So that applies to the seal. I noticed they were saying they needed insight and all these. There's no problem. So if the mayor decides to use some portion of the seal and make it yellow, he's within the ordinance. The other issue that
Can I ask a question, Councilman Lay, about that?
yes, sir.
Okay, I am in possession of the ordinance that you're referring to, and you are correct, it does not specify a color, which I suppose we could make it, anybody who's a public official could make it any color they want.
Right.
We could do pink and green for the AKAs, we could do, black and old gold for the alphas, depending on our pleasure. I do know that some versions of the city seal I've seen even include stars. And of course, the version that we have gotten from the clerk, which I will try to hold up to the screen, does not show any stars in it. And so my concern is that when we have a multitude of versions moving around, we want our city to be taken seriously. And we want to have some consistency, and that includes the Common Council. Because on our website, we have all kinds of designs that are beyond the scope of this. And it's not meant to be petty or to be caught up on minutia, but for us to have some consistency in how we brand ourselves and the official use of the city seal, whether that's by the Common Council or any other area of city government. But I certainly take under advisement your words on the matter.
Mr. President, look at the design again. There are stars there. They are there.
Here?
Yes. Yes. Look at them. There's one before you have the city of Gary. There's one after the century. They're stars.
So I'm talking about there are other city logos, city seals going around with the stars are actually within the circle.
Oh, I don't know about that, but what I gave the council, what I created this I don't want to call it logo, the pen, the lapel pin for the council. We were unable, and I'm sure the clerk will verify, we were unable to find this. It was done this way. So I added, unfortunately, 2 extra stars. In other words, I got 3 on the council pin if you look at it. And that was because of the inability, but we started looking for this in November. And like I said, she continued to look and we finally found it within the last 7 days. So that's what I'm saying.
You are, I think you're muted, Councilman Lay. Councilman Lay, we cannot hear you. Councilman Lay, we can't hear you.
You're muted.
Councilman Lay, I believe you're muted.
And he's gone.
Okay, his computer may have frozen. So we will come back.
2, right.
Okay, we'll come back to Councilman Lay. Any other members for special and select? Well, let me just say that we will be having a community cleanup in the first district, specifically around dumpsters. I know there's a lot of folks who have large items and things they'd like to get rid of to do a little spring cleaning, and that will be June 12th through the 14th. We're planning to have one dumpster that is east of Clay and one dumpster that is west of Clay in Etna. And there will be 2 dumpsters in Miller, one downtown area of Miller and another in the residential area. And we will have a dumpster as well in Glen Ryan. And those locations will be made available very soon. But I wanted to just give the community a heads up that June 12th to the 14th, we will have dumpsters available in Etna, Glen Ryan, and Miller, and I am hopeful that I can at some point partner with my colleague, Councilwoman Atkins, and we can do a joint venture for Emerson, the area that we share. So I wanted to put that out there. I believe Councilman Lay is back with us.
Right, I never muted myself, and I appreciate my legislative assistant sent me notice how to unmute. Someone else muted me.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay. I've been on several boards. I've been muted before.
I assure you it was on no account of mine.
I have no problem. There's another issue. So this issue with the, and I agree if we want to reduce the number of stars, they should take a look at it. The other issue, President, you and I have been going back and forth on, has to do with money owed by the casinos. Basically, I'm talking about the adjusted gross receipts. In fact, you sent me the document, the local development agreement. What I would suggest, and is as I read it, and I'm relying on my interpretation of the document, that the adjusted gross receipts, they must pay no matter who comes in ownership of Majestic Star 1 and 2. I'm somewhat paraphrasing and summarizing. They have something like $1.7 billion. It's the Seminole Indians. But if you continue to read through the document, what I would suggest that this committee that existed under the former mayor, Karen Freeman Wilson, be reestablished with the current mayor, and add, in addition to the finance committee, I would suggest you add Councilman Brewer, because he has experience in this area. And if they continue to read or get the attorneys to read, if you go to the reconciliation under section 5.03, I'm of the opinion they owe us money now. The adjusted gross receipts, as far as I know, we have not received any money. So I would suggest that we assemble whoever the mayor wants on his side, and our finance committee, and that may be probably, since we're short of money, I gather from one meeting, that would probably be the best way to proceed to see about the casino paying. They did not call me back to confirm, so therefore I believe my interpretation is right. They currently owe the city some portion of the $6 million. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Lay, and certainly all those are great points, and the latter of which I know is one of concern, and we've had a lot of different conversations with different parties, and I don't know whether the administration has any response to that, but if they do, this is now a time to do that. I don't hear anything, so Mayor Prince is recognized.
Yeah, we can address that at the end of the meeting as well, Councilman.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And let me just also add that I do want to say that I'm delighted that however it happened, the administration has encouraged a certain landowner to destroy or demolish the old hotel on US 12 and 20, which is an unsightly structure that we've all seen for many of you decades. I've certainly seen for the past 12 years or so, and I'm delighted that that has happened. And any way we can remove light, that is certainly commendable. Any other members for special and select?
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Brown is recognized.
I read an email today from Eric Reeves, who said that those of us who were members of the council who had questions or concerns about repairs to our park pavilions should let him know or take him on a tour of the pavilion so we can see exactly what it is that we need. And I certainly want to be number one on that list, because I have some things that I definitely want him to look at. So I am ready. I'm ready. Whenever he is ready, I am ready to take him on a tour of Tolleson Pavilion. I was over there yesterday for the election. And so I know I had an opportunity to see, you know, the things that need to be done. So if he's ready, I am certainly ready. So
I know I echo your statements, Councilwoman Brown. I know that I've gotten calls about Glen Ryan Pavilion and Park and how the lawn was mowed and so forth. And I know there's a lot of challenges with our parks. So I know we should have all gotten that email, at least the district council persons. And I encourage everyone to avail themselves of that opportunity. Any other members for special and select? All right, seeing and hearing none, hopefully I didn't miss anybody. We will now have our ordinances and resolutions on third and final reading, Madam Clerk.
CPO 2020-21, an ordinance amending Chapter 10, Article 4, Section 10-111 regarding public restrooms and gasoline service stations. Sponsored by Councilman William Godwin, 1st District.
Mr. President,
Councilman Brewer is recognized.
I move for passage of CPO 2020-21.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Questions in this overview. So I guess I will give the overview of this matter. So let me just give some context here. I know we've had a lot of very interesting, thought-provoking conversations over the past, definitely a month, maybe 5 weeks or so, on this matter. And let me tell you what provoked it. So we have public restrooms that are available, should be available within our gas stations around this city. We did the research and reached out to Lake County Weights and Measures. They reported 52 gas stations existing within our city, which is quite a few gas stations for a city that's 56 square miles. I think that some of my colleagues, perhaps many of my colleagues, and certainly many citizens who I've encountered, join me in strong concerns about the conditions and the quality of those gas stations. Since 2002, we've had on our books an ordinance that requires, in the present tense, gas stations to have publicly accessible restrooms. Having been interested in this issue and one who travels all around the country in my car, I understand two things. One, the importance of having a public restroom, but secondly, how a gas station in many cases, especially in our case where we do have limited sit-down restaurants, is the only representation of a city's reputation. It gives a sense of what is allowed, what is not allowed, what is tolerated. And when I asked to get information on this ordinance, I saw that basically it had no enforcement provision in it. It's section 10-111, subparagraph B. It simply ended after stating failure to provide a clean, safe, sanitary, handicap accessible, and secure restroom in gasoline service stations, nothing else. And so it seems to me that it needed some teeth in it. It needed some enforcement in it. Now, I know there were some questions raised about the constitutionality of requiring gas stations to have public restrooms. I am not interested in what I consider a legislative prior restraint, that is, seeking an interpretation of a law that already exists before amending it. I'm also not a judge, so I'm not looking to interpret this legislation that's already on the books. What I am looking to do is to improve existing legislation, which is one of our key missions of the Gary Common Council, is to review existing legislation and to improve it. Now, I would be very shocked if any gas station owner were to go before a court of competent jurisdiction and challenge having a challenge a requirement of a public gas station. I'd be very surprised, and that's why we have a law department, should that happen. But we have to have some level of decency, some level of standards about what we will accept in this community, because we all know that many of these gas station owners own multiple stations throughout the city and certainly this region and country in some cases. And the things that we allow to go on in our city are not what they do in Cherville or Crown Point or Hammond or East Chicago. Because we've just sat idly by and we've tried to do the best we can with the code enforcement we have, but we have to have some rules and regulations and some penalties to incentivize better behavior with our gas stations. We have this ordinance that's been on the books for 18 years. And so I'm encouraging my colleagues to vote yes. Essentially what we are doing is adding initial fines of $500, a second fine of $1,000 as a minimum. But a judge will have the ability to assess a fine of up to $6,000 for non-compliant gas stations. Secondly, the handicap accessible restrooms shall be construed according to our existing City of Gary building code. We're giving gas stations that were in operation prior to 2002 12 months to become compliant with making sure they have a clean, open, safe restroom available. And those gas stations that either were created after 2002, when this ordinance was originally passed, or changed ownership after 2002, they will have 6 months to become compliant. Most of the gas stations, and I've visited many of them, already have a restroom. They just simply aren't making them accessible to the public. We have the list, and we will base this on the Lake County weights and measures list, as what the respective building department and code enforcement departments will use. But the big piece of this is that in order for these gas stations to re-up, renew their business license for the city, they must show compliance. And of course, if they don't have a business license, we have the ability to take far more aggressive action. Now, I know we can get into the minutia of, oh, we feel sorry for these gas stations, but I'm sorry. I was elected by the people of the 1st District, and I'm grateful that they elected me. All of us who are a part of this council were elected not to represent 50 or 52 gas station owners, but to represent 70+ thousand residents, to be concerned about their quality of life. And I will always fight, always fight for the benefit of the many over the concerns of the few. I'm going to choose the people over the pumps, the people over the pumps. And so I urge my colleagues, look, if you think it's unconstitutional and you want to vote against this amendment, have at it. But please make your next course of action to repeal this ordinance. Because why have the ordinance on the book if you think it's unconstitutional? Now, nor am I concerned about whether mayors in the past or whether our current mayor will choose to enforce this. That's not my job as a legislator. My job is to create good laws, to try to convince and persuade my colleagues to support me in the creation of good laws. That's what we're all sitting here to do. And if a mayor is not enforcing the laws or has not historically enforced the law, it's our job to speak on that, advocate for the enforcement of the law. But if there is no law to enforce or no rules to enforce it, then of course the existing ordinance does not have sufficient teeth to merit much power. But I think it's high time we stop getting caught up in minutia especially when it comes to the quality of life of our citizens. Anyone who has traveled 50 states of this country, who has traveled this world, as I have been blessed to do, knows that a public restroom in a gas station from the days of the Green Book, when African Americans had to find a gas station that would allow them to use the restroom,
Mr.
is
President.
not anything new.
Mr. President,
So
point
please
of
let me
order.
conclude my overview.
That was,
So I want to make sure that everyone is clear and understands what we are attempting to do here. We are not creating anything new. We are simply amending an existing ordinance.
Mr. President, you must recognize the point of order. I am very surprised you do not know the difference between oversight and argument. What you have given is an argument for the last probably 10 minutes. I will tell you. Yeah, no, I'm not concluding. I'm going to give you the minutia that you don't want. Say you don't want it. First of all, at 5:36 this morning, I received the most disrespectful text from Councilman Godwin, I'm sorry, where he was transmitting something from some other person. I thought it was absolutely improper to do that. In other words, if that person wanted to contact me, he and I recently, and I need to get this out of the way, had a conversation about texts he gets from the many asking him to ask specific questions of the mayor. I think they should be directed to do that. If a person wants to criticize me in any way, constructive criticism, then call Janice White, my legislative aide, and she will give you both my email and my telephone number. If you want to say something totally disrespectful, give it to Councilman Godwin. I will not transmit anything of that nature to any other councilman. And I have had some very nasty things said to me concerning him and concerning other councilmen. I have never tried to verify. Here's what my problem is, and I'm going to tell you how you can correct this ordinance. You don't have to repeal it. You have to correct it. First of all, you may be interfering with the Commerce Clause. There are federal taxes associated with gas stations. So you're restricting to some extent the right to travel. That may cause a problem. You also could be facing class action. I do question the constitutionality of this. He mentioned the law department. You have probably one of the smallest law departments. As far as I know, they only got 3 people. For them to participate in protracted litigation of this nature, I do not believe people will close stations that generates hundreds of thousands of dollars based upon the lack of this particular city license. But here's what I'm going to suggest. I've had extended conversations not with the city judge, Deidre Monroe. I also took an action against Dixie Dairy, I believe it was somewhere between 2008 and 2010. They were doing something on the property. So what I did was to ask the court to fine them, a substantial fine. The moment the court fines them, the case is over with. Then they can send back code enforcement and fine them again. Now, the purpose of this, at the end of the fines, if they don't pay, what you do is order them to do community service. So in your ordinance, you should be very specific that you want the chief operating officer. Somebody continues to call me. I have no idea what this is. Some kind of emergency. But anyway, what you do is you put in there the CEO and of the whatever it is, if it's a corporation. The court can then order them to do community service. This has been cleared at the state level. Initially, it was only for civil. It is now for criminal. So I think the first thing you should do if you have an interest, not grandstanding, saying you want clean stations. Everybody do, everybody wants clean stations. What I would suggest is that Mr. Godwin, other than yourself, get other members of the council that you respect and sit down with the judge. You don't have to take my word on this. So there are ways of doing it. Other than that, you are throwing the potential for the city to be in these protracted lawsuits. Nothing will be accomplished. We're in a pandemic. I suspect no court would order them to go forward during this period. So again, I think the idea is not bad. It's the fact your approach is horrible because you're saying close stations. Go back to the judge. It's not an emergency. You got some talking about 12 months, 6 months, so it's clear it's not an emergency. So for that period of time, Gary will look horrible, as you say. Go to the city judge, discuss what I'm discussing, and you will find out the best way, not a $500 fine, not a $1,000 fine, $6,000. Soon as she find him $6,000, the case is closed. Then it goes into enforcement or collection. She can then, the code enforcement go again, another $6,000. And like I say, ultimately you ask, it's called a body attachment. I did it with the Dixie Dairy owner. So this is not a theory. I actually did it. We fined him $2,400. He refused to pay it initially. I asked the court to give him community service at the rate of whatever the current hourly rate is in the state. It may be $7.50, $7.25, I'm not sure. And at that time, he elected to pay. I think, as another example, that stuff out on Grant Street on 11th Avenue has been handled very poorly. And we still today have all those trucks out there. So that's what I'm suggesting. Don't pass this, send it back to committee and rewrite it so that you in fact can accomplish your goals. Thank you. Sorry I've taken so much time. Oh, another thing.
That's great.
Please do not, if someone sends you something negative about me, calling me a name or my family, don't transmit that to me. I have no interest in it, none whatsoever. If it is constructive, give them my telephone number, and I've authorized my legislative aide, Janice White, give anyone my telephone number and email, and let them deal with me directly. And I will not transmit to any council person anything negative. I don't see the benefit of that, and I don't need to know that either. And again, I'll
thank you, Councilman.
Yes.
No problem. Thank you, Councilman Lay. And of course, I'm a public official, and I'm used to people saying a lot of negative things, even on
Oh, I am too. You sent it. That's what I'm
So,
objecting to. You sending it. You're the president of this council. You sending it.
Yes.
Joe Blow can
All right.
send anything he wants.
Thank you,
No, it's not funny.
Thank you,
Again,
Councilman Lay.
I understand the personality here. No, it's not funny. They have my email and they have my telephone number. Give them that. Let them talk to me directly. I don't need you to be on the relay team.
Thank you. So what Councilman Lay is referring to, there was an article that came out a few days ago in the newspaper that talked about the second committee meeting that we had on this matter. And a particular gentleman came on my Facebook page and had what was a very disrespectful thing to say, but indicated that he had experienced challenges himself at the gas station in my district in terms of demanding the use of a public restroom based on the ordinances that were in the book. And I did share that comment with Councilman Lay that I was put on my own Facebook page. And so I apologize if what was stated on my page and that I shared with him was perceived as offensive. I have the highest respect.
But you introduced Borum. You used Borum. You used the current election that you disagree.
I'm not going to get
What does
into
no,
politics.
he didn't introduce Borum. You put Borum in there.
Point
Come
of
on,
order.
come on.
Point of order. Point of order. So at this point, I will, if there's any other questions or discussion about the ordinance, let me just say that, again, we're just amending an existing ordinance that has been on the books for 18 years. I'm not interested in asking a judge what their opinion of legislation is prior to it being considered or passed by this body, whether or not they think it's unconstitutional. I know that public restrooms in gas stations are just something that's certainly not uncommon in this region, in this state, in this world. And so if the administration chooses to enforce an existing law in the ways that we have provided for here, which I would encourage them to do, and if in the wisdom of the Corporation Council they thought it was something they could not do, then I think at that point it would be appropriate for the legislative branch to revisit it. Again, I want to be clear, we're not creating anything that does not already exist. And so, again, the mayor has absolute right to veto it and for this body to reconsider it. I just know that having standards for our restrooms, I'd be very surprised if the court found it to be unconstitutional, but that's why we have courts. And so that's
Point
all I
of
have
order,
to say
you're
on the matter.
repeating the same argument. In other words, you're extending the argument. What I objected to was you sending it to me, and you said Bourne, that I suspect certainly helped Miss Bourne or attempted to help her. That's what, it was nasty. Why didn't you just keep it to yourself? I don't care where it was. You sent it to me at 5:36. I have to keep my phone open because of my family. So you're repeating your argument. At this point, call for the vote. That's all. You don't have to justify why you're doing it. I think there's a better way of doing it. That's all.
Any other questions or discussion?
Mr. President.
Councilman Brewer is recognized.
Thank you. Not to any of the discussion that went just before, but to the bathrooms itself, it is definitely a crucial issue inside our city. I remember when I first got on the council, that was an issue, and I addressed it then before this body. That I saw a young woman pull off the highway there, off on Broadway, matter of fact, west of the expressway there, south of the expressway there, and where she attempted to go use the restroom and she could not use the restroom. And I observed her husband and her young son shielding her on the side of the building so she can go to the restroom. To me, that was definitely in poor taste. It gives a bad look to our community, as a city, as a whole. We don't, as you know, and we all know, we don't see this in other communities where we continue to have this discussion over restrooms inside of gas stations there. I believe something needs to happen. I know that we have talked with code enforcement, and there was a piece that was missing. That was the financial piece there, the how to deal with it to get them to do something about it. I do believe if this is not something that the administration does not intend to pursue and would like for us to take a different route with it, he does have, Mr. Mayor, Chris has the right to veto it and send it back to us. And if we choose to try and override the veto, we go that way. But I believe at that time, the mayor will weigh in which direction he would go, whether he sign it or he would veto it then. But I think at this point here, we as a body have a duty to make sure that our city looks a certain way. And we all know there's a critical issue throughout the entire city. And I think we need to do something. We need to move forward with it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mayor Prince is recognized.
If I may, and certainly I was going to wait to the end to address all of the issues, but this one's, I guess, important enough to speak about now before the vote. And so there's one member on this body who was actually a member of the body when this ordinance was first introduced. And I'm certain that she probably remembers a significant portion of the conversation that took place afterwards. And there were questions of constitutionality, whether that was founded or not, I certainly am not aware. But what I think is that the spirit of it is right. Certainly we want to provide the best conditions for all of our residents and visitors as they come in. But in doing so, I think that perhaps this body could take a more comprehensive look at it, because I'll be completely frank with you, we have restaurants that simply don't allow people to use them unless they're making a purchase. It happened to me a couple of weeks ago, and fortunately, as I had to really go badly that day, there was a person in there who recognized me and said that that's the mayor. But the point being is that should be a courtesy extended to everyone. Something that I think, and that we're certainly focusing on, and for the last couple of weeks, myself and my administration have been engaged in, is the cleanliness around these facilities, not only those, but any business entity. And in fact, for the last 10 days, we've actually, and myself included, personally visited those stations and, didn't threaten them or anything like that, but simply made a personal request that they enhance the aesthetics of their facilities. And in revisiting, I can see those efforts starting. And so I'm not sure what this body is going to do with this particular ordinance, but I would prefer that you take it back and take a more comprehensive look at it. I certainly don't have any intention of vetoing it because the spirit, as I said, is accurate. I just don't think it's complete. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Prince. I just want to respond quickly that I totally agree that there's a whole host of areas where we need to enhance public access to restrooms. Now, this is just dealing with the gas stations because that ordinance is already on the books. Now, I trust we have other ordinances throughout our code that deal with restaurants and other areas, hotels, other areas of public accommodations, and probably have to change or amend each of those one by one. I think this starts that process, and I certainly agree with you that we should continue and go through our other ordinances and look for areas to make improvements. Any other questions or discussion? All right, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
No,
Councilman Weatherspoon,
No.
Councilman Williams, Councilman Williams,
You're muted.
Sorry about that. No.
President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, vote is 5 yes, 3 noes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With a vote of 5 yes and 3 noes, the ordinance passes and is so ordered.
CPO 2020-25, in order to revise in the 2020 appropriations for redevelopment department operating budget for the fiscal year beginning January the 1st, 2020, ending December 31st, 2020. Sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary.
Mr. President, I move for passage of CPO 2020-25 on third and final reading.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. An overview at this time.
Yes, Mr. President. Good evening, council members. 2020-25 is an ordinance that makes change to the Department of Redevelopment's budget by adding a new project manager and deleting 2 program coordinators to create that position at a salary amount of $59,125.
Thank you, Attorney Colvin. Any other questions or discussion?
discussion.
Councilman Lay is recognized.
I believe the mayor has absolute authority, within reason, I should say, to, in fact, employ a person for this position. I also believe the mayor has the right to ask. What I object to is the job description. Although, President Godwin, you attempted to explain all the credentials of this individual that they're about to hire or have hired. It doesn't matter. But what we have is a job description that it makes no sense whatsoever. It talks about a person having a GED or a high school graduate. It talks about an associate degree. As you explained, the person that they're hiring has a PhD. So it seems to me the job description is subterfuge. And I'm gonna now bring up a subject I've had privately with the mayor. I've indicated to him I will do everything possible to ensure that his administration works. I'm not here to obstruct it in any way. But I do expect that when his staff sends forward job descriptions of this nature, where they do not at all match what you're hiring this person for. They talk about read deeds, read other legal documents. As a result, in spite of the fact that I believe he has the right to do so, I will vote no because of the job description. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Lay. Any other questions or discussion?
Mr. President.
Attorney Colvin is recognized.
I would just like to add that at the Finance Committee meeting, when the job description was discussed, I offered at that time to provide a new job description. One has been developed, but Councilman Lay specifically said that he did not want the job description revised because none of the other council members spoke to that issue. I'm certainly not opposed to doing that, and I'm willing to do it. So this is not something that we're resistant doing, and it's certainly not subterfuge. So that's, I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Colvin. Councilman Lay is recognized.
I absolutely agree. Her statement is absolutely correct. I took the reason for the amendment or the modification would be solely based upon my objection. I appear to be the only one to object that this person is not properly trained to read legal documents. So that's why I said, so I agree absolutely with Attorney Colvin. I told her do not modify any document because one person is objecting. If the majority wants to pass it, let them pass it. I have been on the council and other boards before where people will call me and say, or have discussions, and they want to change it, so I'm bound to vote yes. So she's right. I told her it wasn't necessary. I think that should have been done for the entire council, not for Gloria Slay. That shouldn't even been asked. That should have simply been done. That was a poorly drafted job description. Extremely poor. I don't know, I'm assuming the mayor didn't draft it, but it was a very poorly drafted.
Mr. President.
Attorney Colvin, I didn't hear what you said.
I just said it was done, sir.
I have a question.
Councilwoman Brown is recognized.
And I asked this question at the Finance Committee meeting, I believe. If a person in their job description, they read a legal document, I don't see that they have to be an attorney to read a document. I mean, you're not taking it to present it to a court of law. You just reading it. Many of us read legal documents, but we don't do anything with them in terms of taking them to a court of law. That's just what I think.
Thank you, Councilwoman Brown.
Mr. President.
Councilman Brewer is recognized.
I heard the argument inside the committee about with the job description, and I believe in the intent, and my pleasure is to work with the mayor too also, not to bring any harm, because we all must succeed in this great city. But I think that the sense of the job description was this person is not going to be here forever. So it was an open job description there. I think it was very broad, where it says that you don't have to have a college degree to get this job here if you can do X, Y, and Z. I don't have a problem with it.
I will just quickly say that I generally agree with Councilman Lay about the job description itself. I do happen to know the young lady, of course that's not necessarily a relevant point, but for context, I do know the young lady who was in the position. I know her to be highly qualified, but I think he is right, and that in going forward, we really should, make sure that these job descriptions make sense. Because I think you referred to having a GED as a minimum and an associate's degree as a minimum, and it was kind of all over the place. I do certainly understand Councilwoman Brown's point of view, as well as Councilwoman Atkins, which was raised in the committee meeting about the reading of legal documents. I'm a licensed attorney, as is Councilman Lay, and I certainly understand the point that he makes is that when one reads something, there's the notion that you're going to do something with it. I think I'm almost quoting him exactly, right? You're reading it not just for your own pleasure, but you're doing something differently with it. Even in the real estate world, for example, when real estate brokers fill out contracts, all they can do is fill out the contract. They can fill in forms that have been pre-approved by lawyers of the state. They can't draft new language or seek to interpret that contract for a client. They have to just say this is the plain language of it. So I certainly think there's a fine line, and I will certainly say that there's room for improvement. But I think I agree with everybody on the council that we certainly want to work together to accomplish the goals. And it helps that I do happen to know this lady, but that shouldn't be the standard going forward. Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
No,
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, vote is 7 yes, 1 no.
With a vote of 7 yes and 1 no, CPO 2020-25 passes and is so ordered.
CPO 2020-26, an ordinance requiring the City of Gary Mayor's Office to submit monthly financial reports to the Common Council, to the Gary Common Council, sponsored by William Godwin, Councilman First District.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Brown is recognized.
I move for passage of CPO 2020-26 on third and final reading.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. This time, for an overview, what we need to do is to make this ordinance an amendment to an existing ordinance.
Okay.
So, and my apologies for not having relayed that, because there is an ordinance that basically what we're doing is stating that we will get financial reports, including accounts payable, that will be delivered to the Finance Committee. Right now, we have an ordinance on the book that says we will get just a financial report, financial summary, it's very general, on the 15th of every month. So what we're going to do is amend that language, and I suggest we take it back to committee, and then we can take it up at our next council meeting.
Okay, so is the request then that I amend my motion?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Mr. President, I move that we send CPO 2020-25, I'm sorry, 2026 back to the Finance Committee.
Second.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
yes,
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, vote is 8-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With a vote of 8-0, CPO 2020-26 is referred back to the Finance Committee.
Mr. President,
Councilman Brewer is recognized.
we need a date for that at this time.
Absolutely.
For
Thank
the
you.
Finance Committee?
Yes,
Well, it'll be 2 weeks from today,
that's fine.
so that would be June 17th. Oh, I'm sorry, 2 weeks from yesterday.
Will we do it on next week?
We will, oh, the Finance Committee meeting, I'm sorry. It would be a week from yesterday. So yesterday, yeah,
June 9th?
right,
What time?
Okay.
5:30.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that there will be a committee hearing on CPO 2020-26 on Tuesday, June 9th at 5 o'clock?
5:30.
5:30 p.m. Thank you. Please continue, Madam Clerk.
CPO 2020-27, an ordinance establishing new funds and budgets for the Indiana State Department of Health Immunization Grant and Public Health Preparedness and Response Grant, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Brown.
I move for passage of CPO 2020-27 on third and final reading.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. We have the overview at this time.
Mr. President and council members, this is an ordinance establishing grants for the immunization program, as well as the public health and emergency preparedness grant that the city of Gary receives from the Indiana State Department of Health. The immunization grant is $77,000. The emergency preparedness grant is $50,191. These budgets are established to begin July 1, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. I'm requesting that these budgets be approved.
Thank you, Attorney Colvin. Any questions or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes,
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, vote is 8-0.
With a vote of 8-0, CPO 2020-27 passes and is so ordered.
CPO 2020-28, an ordinance revising 2020 appropriations for Department of Community Investments, salary and operating budgets, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Brown is recognized.
I move for passage of CPO 2020-28 on third and final reading.
Second?
Been moved and properly seconded. Overview at this time.
Mr. President and council members, 2020-28 is an ordinance, first of all, that eliminates an air quality manager because that particular position has been moved to Fund 845, and that position was created by ordinance back in February. In this ordinance, also, there is an increase to the salary for the zoning administrator from $41,000 to $51,000 per year. And also a new code, zoning and code inspector position is created in this budget as well.
And I just wanted to clarify, I know we had discussions during the committee meeting, but I want to publicly state that I'm glad to share with Councilman Williams with the Morningside area in the 6th District, but I strongly encourage, certainly as we approach budget season, that dollars be allocated such that the 1st District, Miller, Edna, Glen Ryan, and part of Emerson have its own code enforcement officer. I'm aware that grants restrict us to a degree because of, I think, some of the demographic data for those areas, but we certainly have our share of challenges. Even the mayor indicated earlier about a gas station in my district that has really caused me a lot of headache and a lot of folks in the administration. And so I would just hope that, I know we're sharing now, and I know we have to share our resources, but just like the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th districts, I hope that the 1st District also will exclusively have someone with whom I can work and with whom all of us can work to ensure that our code is being enforced.
We certainly will try to do that, Councilman.
Thank you.
I'll call you back.
Mr. President,
Councilman Brewer is recognized.
2 quick questions there. So there's a new zoning director that we have now? Is that what I heard?
The zoning administrator, we don't have one at the moment.
Okay, we don't have one at the moment. And my second question was about code enforcement there. I know we talk a lot about code enforcement, we only have a few, but any codes can be enforced by the Gary Police Department. Am I right or wrong about that? Because I think we kind of limit ourselves when we say we only have 4, we only have 5 to cover a district.
Generally, when we're talking about these officers, we're talking about the items like weeds, how the exterior of buildings, that kind of thing. And generally, the police officers have been limited to, or usually enforced, maybe I'll put it that way, code enforcement issues that relate to other issues that are more traffic related, say cars, abandoned
Right.
cars, for example,
So-
those kind of items.
So what I'm saying is, but they do have that power to still enforce these codes.
There are codes they can enforce, yes.
Okay. Yeah, because I know we have reserve and things of this nature that we can assign to certain tasks. And I was just wondering, because we have this argument about we don't have enough code enforcement officers. And a lot of people have asked, you know, well, what about the Gary Police Department? And I do know respect, trust me. I just want to just clear that up also, that Gary Police Department can enforce codes also, as far as zoning code. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. President, I'm not sure. Mr. President,
Councilman Lay is recognized.
I'm not sure what Councilman Brewer was discussing. So we have a limited police force. And I agree with Attorney Coleman. Other than things that probably would be a breach of state law, I don't think we should introduce, and I was the code enforcement attorney for several years under the former Mayor Rudy Clay. That would be a poor utilization of your police department. Obviously, they can enforce it, but I would want us to hire a person with a lot less experience. In other words, these people go through academies and things of that nature. It looked like we could make money available if we're short one to hire one. Maybe if we get the money from the local development agreement, we could hire a police person to do it. But to turn around and use your police, I think that would be a misuse of your police department altogether. And again, I believe the deployment of the police department lies solely within the jurisdiction of the mayor. We have, of course, handled the payment of them, whether we're going to give them raises and what their salary would be, but he deploys the police department. So if he is not deploying them that way, I'm not, and I would agree with him. That's not a good idea to use your police that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Lay. Councilman Brewer is recognized.
At no point was I requesting that the mayor do that. I was just stating isn't that option that could be used on certain instances. You talked about the gas station on Grand Boulevard there, which I received calls also from it. And we have several officers that went past it, and we at the time didn't have a code enforcement officer. So what did we do? Did we just sit and wait until we get someone and these things continue to go on? When we have officers that live in the neighborhood, that drive through there on a regular basis, that can at some time deal with some of these issues there. That we all get these type of calls from, the mayor included, all the way down to the council members.
Mr. Chairman.
Mayor Prince is recognized.
This is one of those issues I guess I'll address briefly now. So from our perspective, what needs to happen is a complete restructuring of our code enforcement department, and that's specifically what we're working on now. What we believe it's going to take, in addition to an enhancement of the department and a restructuring, are more creative efforts to address code enforcement. As you all know, one of our strongest or biggest issues, and always has been, and to some extent appears to be even more pervasive now, is the issue of dumping. But to your point, code enforcement is certainly one of those issues that's important to all of us. And, you know, it's certainly imperative to the city in terms of representing our best light or I guess putting our best foot forward in terms of what we actually represent in cleanliness. But, you know, in addition to that, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say it, one of those issues certainly are City of Gary properties. And as you all know, we've certainly been placing a lot of attention on those as well. And so I certainly appreciate everyone's concern here, and I absolutely encourage your continued insight and participation, because this is an issue that's certainly not going to be solved by the administration alone. It's everyone's responsibility to take place or to take part in the enforcement of code enforcement.
Thank you, Mayor Prince. And Councilman Brewer is recognized.
One last question, and the only reason why I brought that up because a few years ago, and we talking over 5 years ago, I was inside of Maryville working in a commercial district there, and I parked my truck where the fire lane is at, and what I observed was the fire chief was out writing tickets. Not code enforcement, the fire chief. And he instructed me that this is something that he does himself, where he goes around to all the malls and different things of that nature there where handicap is at, fire zones is at, and he enforces those things. So I would just wonder, is it some kind of way where we can like, not cross train, but, you know, do multitasking sometimes, you know, when things are not so troubling inside the city where police is needed, because the city is not bad all the time where we just police are running all the time, but there are some downtimes, and we all see different things. Even councilmen have asked sometimes could they be code enforcement, but there is definitely a need to give the mayor as many resources as he can. I just want to be broad as I could with it, that's all. But not insinuating that the mayor do anything of that nature. But if that option is there, that the mayor would use it, that's all.
Mr. President.
Councilman Lay is recognized.
I apologize for continuing this debate. If they violate the law, and that would be a violation of parking and handicap parking, things of that nature, the police do that. That goes into court. They would testify in the court that certain things are incorrect. What I thought you was talking about, grass not being cut or something of that nature. Clearly, if they have a car that does not have a license plate or it's an expired license plate, the police will take care of that. The whole purpose of code enforcement was to allow local municipalities to benefit from certain issues. The only difference between code enforcement and the regular criminal court is you can't go to jail for code enforcement. But there's a way to attach the body though. But that's the only significant difference. So if it's violating the law, the police are doing it. They should be doing it. I don't know what they're doing if they're not doing that.
Mr. President.
Councilwoman Brown is recognized.
I get so many complaints from my constituents about those kinds of things that the police just ignore, okay? Even when I have my community meetings, I have constituents who complain about persons who park their cars up on the, you know, they park it on the grass, they park it up on the driveway, and the policemen see it and do nothing or say nothing. Or they've got a lot of cars in their neighborhood with Illinois plates, and policemen live there or drive past there and say nothing. They're not cited for those kinds of things. So I'm not saying that policemen ought to become code enforcement officers, but I am saying that there are many times that the policemen drive past violations that are in fact code violations. Now, I don't know who should be taking care of them, but they are code violations and nobody does anything about them. So I get a lot of complaints about that. Things that, you know, as I said, cars parked up on the sidewalk, parked in the yard, you know, and nobody says anything about it.
Mr.
Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell is recognized.
I've had code enforcement tell me they can't do anything about the cars. They go up and knock on the door. Can you please get the car out the grass? Can you get it off the sidewalk? Well, why won't you all tow it? Well, we can't do that. Why not? Can you call the police and have them do it then? I have a neighbor down the street now. Every day he parks on the sidewalk. When I brought it to his attention, he told me, do what you gotta do. Okay. It just makes no sense.
Right.
Well,
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Williams is recognized.
No, that was actually the mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor Prince. I was seeing one thing and hearing another.
Councilman Williams does have a very distinctive and unique voice as well.
We need a good sense of humor in here, Mayor. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. So what we're discussing is something that all of us know has occurred, you know, for some time. And, you know, as I said earlier, this administration is working on restructuring code enforcement as we know it, and to that extent, when we're there, we'll certainly share the new approaches with council, and we believe that we'll start to see some fruit of that labor.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
And I would just add, I think, is that there are situations, I know most district council people, but even some of the LRs, but certainly district, we get a lot of calls. And many folks think that we are personally responsible or have the power to do something about these things. And of course, we have to let them know we refer this, to the executive branch. We don't have code enforcement authority to issue a citation to someone. But I certainly know that there are some cases where neighbors are trying to, how shall I say it, to take matters in their own hands. And there are some aggressive neighbors when it comes to this. And in some cases, you do need a police officer to come and to assist code enforcement because it could be a violent or dangerous situation between neighbors or for a code enforcement officer who does not have police powers. So I can certainly imagine situations where we would want some police officers to be involved depending on code enforcement matter at hand.
Okay.
Are any other questions or discussion? Right, hearing and seeing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell. Yes. Councilman Lay,
Yes,
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 8-0.
With a vote of 8-0, TPO 2020-28 passes and is so ordered.
TPO 2020-29, an ordinance requiring the City of Gary Board of Public Works to submit approved contracts to the Gary Common Council, sponsored by Councilman William Godwin, 1st District.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Brown is recognized.
I move for passage of CPO 2020-29 on third and final reading.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. I have the overview at this time. Let me just say, basically, this is an effort for us to systematize our processes to ensure that this body, which is charged with oversight of our finances, is aware of what is happening within the Board of Public Works in a meaningful way. Originally, this ordinance, as presented, had a timeline for the Board of Public Works to deliver any professional services contracts to this body, particularly the Finance Committee. I think at that point it said within 3 business days after passage. We are seeking to amend that original ordinance that was presented, and we want to make some changes to it. And I want to specifically cite those changes, and Attorney Williams, make sure I'm not doing anything inappropriate or out of order. Certainly don't want to do that. But 2 of those changes are the following, and Councilman Lay wisely suggested that as opposed to our body receiving professional services contracts after they have been approved, he thought it prudent, and I agree with him, that these contracts should be received prior to their presentation at the Board of Public Works meeting. And I believe we said 3 business days prior to their presentation at the duly scheduled Board of Public Works meeting. And secondly, a point that Councilman Williams wisely raised, and Councilman Lay as well, regarding the minutes of the Board of Public Works meetings. So the minutes will be provided to us, I'm suggesting, within 7 business days after such meeting. Now, I'm sensitive to the administration's concerns that were raised during the committee meeting about, making sure there's a sufficient amount of time. Councilman Lay wisely suggested that the meeting should be recorded anyway, and so the tape recorder could be made available to this body. And I'm not certain what the process is, but certainly this Board of Public Works runs our city, so I would imagine that there are well-kept and sufficiently and swiftly kept minutes of the actions of the Board of Public Works. What I'm seeking to do is to amend this ordinance in two ways. One, that the Finance Committee will receive any professional services contracts 3 business days prior to the scheduled Board of Public Works meeting. And secondly, the minutes of a duly scheduled Board of Public Works meeting will be provided to the Finance Committee within 7 business days of such meeting. I think what we need to do, please instruct me, Attorney Williams, is to have a motion to amend the ordinance.
That's correct. You've now explained the amendment, so now there should be a motion to amend by substitution to add that language. And if that amendment passes, then you would then vote on the ordinance as amended.
Point of order, Mr. President.
Councilman Lay is recognized.
What are the other council people? Let them speak first. I will speak after. So was about to speak. Sounded like Councilmember Brown.
My question was, do we need to send this one back to committee also?
I don't think we,
I just want to know.
oh, I don't think we need to. I think these are changes that we can make, and certainly I can ensure that it's accurately transcribed on this ordinance as amended before signature.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Councilman Lay is recognized.
absolutely agree with what Councilwoman Brown just said. Why not send it back to committee?
I didn't know what she said.
She said, should it be sent back?
Okay, I didn't know she, okay, it was a question, okay.
Well, let me put more into the question. I'm suggesting it be sent back to committee. First of all, the Board of Works is under the Indiana Open Door Law, and currently I'm the chairman of that committee. Of course, I can be replaced at the chair's wishes. I will have no objection. You do not need to make oral amendments on the floor. Mr. Williams once mentioned something called scribbler's error. That usually is where you are trying to correct a law or a contract with parole evidence. Oral evidence. He's absolutely right about that. All I'm suggesting, we talked about this in the committee. So in fact, I'm surprised you didn't do it before it, came for third and final where you're trying to pass it. So if we're gonna ask for these contracts, and I believe in the meeting, Councilman Brewer said somehow we control the minutes, and I understand what he's talking about. He's talking about the taping. The minutes are absolutely under the Board of Works. If they're not producing minutes fast enough, that is truly a tragedy. They run the city. And we do not appoint the members to the Board of Works, but we created the Board of Works. I would suggest we're slowing it down by 7 days, rewrite it, and I think Attorney Williams just explained, you have to be crystal clear what the language was before and what is now. I don't see how you do that orally. Maybe you figured out a way to do it. Send it back, make the corrections, and it comes back in 7 days. It comes back. I just don't like that. Oral thing.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Councilwoman Brown, would you like to do a motion to refer it back to committee?
Okay. I can change my motion.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay. I move to send CPO 2020-29 back to the Finance Committee meeting. Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday, June 9th at 5:30 p.m.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded by Council Members Atkins and Barnes Caldwell. Any questions or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes,
Councilman Weatherspoon,
I think
Councilman
he's
Weatherspoon,
muted. I believe he's muted.
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 8-0.
For the vote of 8-0, CPO 2020-29 is referred back to the Finance Committee with a meeting to be held on Tuesday, June 9th at 5:30 p.m.
Mr. President, entertaining ordinances and resolutions for the third and final.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, we will have our mayor's report.
No, second reading.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Council pending ordinances and resolutions on second reading.
CPO 2020-30, CPR 2020-07, a declaratory resolution of the Common Council of the City of Gary, Indiana, designating that certain area of the City of Gary be established as the Broadway Lofts Economic Revitalization Area, to which deductions from assessed value may be requested by an applicant to Common Council of the City of Gary pursuant to Indiana Code 6-1.1-12.1, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary, Councilman Michael A. Brown at large, City of Gary, Indiana Redevelopment Commission, and City of Gary, Indiana Office of Community Investment.
Mr. President.
Councilman Brewer is recognized.
Yes, I would like to move CPR 2020-07 to the Planning Committee, with a planning committee meeting June the 9th at 5 p.m. and a public hearing June the 16th via Zoom.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any questions or discussion?
What's the date and time? What's the date and time again?
That's June 9th at 5 p.m. and a public hearing June 16th at 6 p.m. via Zoom. Well, both of them are via Zoom.
Any other questions or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, vote is 8-0.
With a vote of 8-0, CPR 2020-07 passes on second reading with a committee hearing to be held on June 9th at 5 o'clock p.m. and a public hearing to be held on June 16th at 6 o'clock p.m., both of which via Zoom.
Mr. President, entertaining ordinances and resolutions on second reading.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This time we will have our mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Glad to be here again this evening with you and members of the council and everyone who's joined us for this Zoom teleconference. Just a few comments, and then I'll try to go back and answer most of the questions, or at least some of them that were posed earlier. I believe I've made sufficient notes to address all of them. Some instances we may have to take it under advisement and refer back to the council. Guess I'll start with probably the topic of, certainly the last week or so, and that's been the George Floyd case in Minneapolis. As all of us know, it's been a little bit more than a week since we saw the tragedy of that murder that occurred right before our eyes. And today, we learned that the Minneapolis officer, Derek Chauvin, has actually been charged with second-degree murder now. The two officers who sat by and watched him while Mr. Chauvin tortured Mr. Floyd have also been charged with aiding and abetting murder. I say that only because it continues to be a prevalent issue, certainly in this community. In some ways, that issue has made others resurface, or at least sort of accentuated other issues that occur in this city. And I'll just end by saying we certainly have a long way to go before we see justice. But it's not just justice for George Floyd. It's about justice for all Americans. And in this instance, particularly people of color who feel that their government has ignored or you know, in some instances targeted them. Here in Gary, there's been accusations that we continue to struggle with, you know, relative to cases of violence by our police officer against our citizens. And some of these are being investigated by other agencies. In some instances, they're certainly mired in other litigation. You know, I've been called on to speak on a couple of different occasions that took place before this administration, and I'm certainly not pointing that out to abscond myself from any responsibility. But the point is that both of those issues are involved in either litigation against the city or a continued investigation. And to that extent, I simply cannot say anything about them. Yesterday, Councilman Williams actually joined the police chief, deputy chief, and myself at a meeting where, and the new president of the FOP as well. Mr. Chairman, you were scheduled to attend that, but you contacted me and told me that you had some other event that came up, and we certainly appreciate everybody's schedules. But that was a significant meeting and an opportunity for the administration and certainly those in law enforcement, as well as the council, or at least the public safety chairman of the council, to reiterate that we will not tolerate violent behavior towards our residents. We have a number of groups here in the city, Black Lives Matter, Save Our Families, NAACP, Urban League, and I'm certain that there are many more, and each of them play a very important role, and I respect their importance. Presently, I have the director of communication reaching out to several of those groups for an opportunity to engage in dialogue with them, civil dialogue, that is. And we certainly will keep the council apprised of that. And just as we did for the last opportunity, invite you all to have a voice as well. On that same note, recently received some information, and I'm sure that some of you may have also, is that President Obama has actually issued a pledge of sorts that he's asking city councils and mayors and municipalities to engage in. I, for one, certainly am going to take the pledge, and I ask that each member of the council join me in doing so as another further affirmation of what our particular stance is on police violence and that. And don't get me wrong, Mr. Chairman, you know, I want to make it emphatically clear that I, in the less than 6 months that I've been here, I've worked with some very fine officers. I'm in constant conversation with them. In fact, there were about 10 conversations today, and Deputy Chief and the Chief are on the line. They may want to chime in, but from my perspective, they are making a very diligent effort to change the narrative that's out there, and to, at the same time, protect all of our citizens. And to that extent, it's our responsibility to provide them with all the resources that we possibly can and to support them in those efforts. At the same time, they understand what our position is, and as I said, they've joined us for the statement that they too condemn police violence against the residents, and we're going to continue to reiterate that until we see a better day in not only this city but in this country. Lastly, I just want to speak briefly on the primary elections. Congratulations to all the winners in yesterday's elections. That had to be one of the craziest, most difficult election cycles that I've certainly seen in the last 20 years that I've been involved. It was longer than usual. It included having a campaign through a pandemic, and just basically like anything that we've ever seen, and probably any of you have seen in terms of elections. But I want to congratulate the winners, but also thank everyone who ran in yesterday's primary. They sacrificed time, money, family time, and all of you on this call certainly know what that means and how important it is. Going to go back to the questions that were raised and try to address them as briefly as possible, Mr. Chair. I'll start with the flooding issue. Yeah, like many of you, started receiving calls that evening, and Dan Vicari, who's on the line and may want to confirm some of the statements that I'll make, or he may just stand by, or may even have some additional information to ask. But sometime that evening, he actually contacted me before I contacted him, which is, what the various department heads do. If there's issues that they know that will affect the entire community, they certainly share it, and we try to share it as promptly as we can with all of you all. But that was an unprecedented rain, and to that extent, the plants were pumping at maximum capacity for nearly 72 hours, and as Mr. Bakari reported, it was the highest floater, whatever that means, and guess it means that our systems were overfilled. But to his point, it was the highest floater that had occurred since 1935, and we experienced over 158 million gallons a day during that particular time. All the gates to the sanitary district, or I'm sorry, the Little Calumet River and the Grand Calumet River were over flooding. And as he described, it's one of those issues that we just constantly have to deal with. In addition to a very aged infrastructure system. And so from my perspective, I believe that the folks at the sanitary district responded as efficiently and effectively as they can. And in many instances, they continue to respond to some of those issues, including taking claims from residents in an effort to see if at all possible we can get FEMA or have the federal government designate some, or the governor rather, designate some sort of emergency in an effort to try to find some relief for those folks. Let's see here. There was a question about the parks and pavilions and an email from Mr. Reeves. In doing so, I gotta say that Mr. Reeves is probably one of the hardest working folks, sometimes a little bit too much. He's engaged in just about every aspect of the administration in an effort to try to set us on the right path. But yeah, he is absolutely engaged in the efforts of trying to at least discover or explore what your concerns are with the different parks and pavilions. And to that end, once we establish all of those, in addition to our own assessment, we will come up with some sort of comprehensive plan relative to the resources that we have. And you all are certainly more familiar with that, or equally familiar with that than I am, or as I am. There was some discussion about the LDA. I'll just briefly say that our administration, particularly the Corporation Counsel, as well as our acting controller, continue to pursue all the elements of that. We are satisfied and certain that, as the Councilman Lay pointed out, we will be receiving our agreed stipend, if you will, from the LDA. However, the councilman did also bring up an interesting point that there may or is a provision that suggests that we can get those in advance instead of waiting for the last year. And we've advised council to explore that as well. There were questions about recycling, paving, and homicide, and I can do those really briefly here. Recycling's back on track. Paving, we're not certain about how much paving we're going to be able to do. That answer was given last week, but like all of you, we recognize that we have 53 square miles or more of city, and I'm not certain how many linear miles of street that is, but certainly that's an issue that we're going to continue. But what is in full effect right now are the patching crews, and we've got a better understanding of how they work. They're deployed 3 times a week, and so if there are any areas that you all recognize that are in immediate need of that, I would say get it over to General Services, and they typically respond very, very promptly. Lastly, maybe, I wanted to thank all of the council persons for all of your efforts in utilizing the dumpsters that were provided and joining in with the cleanup. As I stated earlier, this is an effort that's going to take an entire city. The administration is working on its part to I guess, address the other components of that, such as code enforcement, which we discussed at great length this evening, and the enhancement of it, because they all have to work together in order to ensure that we get the best mileage out of it all. Um, that's about it. Well, one last thing. There was a discussion about census, and I just want to reiterate that we have 3 members of our administration that are very actively engaged with the census efforts. I would encourage, invite, or ask that every council member attend a meeting if your schedules permit. Certainly, Arlene Colvin or Shanita Starks are 2 of the people who are readily available and engaged in those meetings and can share the most current information in terms of the efforts. We've also invited Dr. McLeod on a weekly basis to express her perspective of it and to continue to encourage people. Fortunately for us, we have a few more months to do this, as it's been extended until, I believe, the middle of October. So I join you all in just encouraging people to participate. Beauty of it now is that we can certainly do it online. And so all it takes is just a little bit more effort, and I'm certain that we can get our numbers up. That's all that I have for you all this evening, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the opportunity again, and I look forward to the next opportunity to engage.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Mayor Prince. At this time, Councilman Brewer is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. And my question is never to be redundant with the mayor at all. But you know, a lot of times the mayor has sat in our seats too as council members. A lot of times miss meetings and they don't understand what we do a lot of times. So I want to iterate those different things just for the public's sake there. I know we had a discussion on a number of these things last week there, last council meeting. I do appreciate it. But I know there has been some changes in the recycle with the pickup on recycle. If you can go into that, because I have experienced quite a bit of problems on the west side in Sector 30 with the recycle pickup.
Sure, Councilman. I'll speak to that briefly, and Dan's on the line. Perhaps he can, add even more clarity to it. But, COVID, and I hate to keep referring back to that, but it's a fact, certainly created challenges for us in many instances. And waste pickup and recycling certainly was one of those areas. During that period, we had an opportunity to reevaluate what we were doing and discovered that provision in the contract that existed allowed us to revisit the way that we do it. And so, as you all have been made aware, Republic Waste is now handling our recycling. And the biggest change to it all is now that it's being picked up on the garbage collection day. As with many things, and especially when you introduce a pandemic and the response is required in an effort to address or at least consider that, there are bound to be hiccups. And for the first week, and perhaps even to some degree, there still may be a few, but certainly the calls have stopped coming in, or at least in abundance. And I believe the issue is firmly under control now. Equally important, I want to point out what this new mechanism provided us an opportunity to do. So it's less expensive to do it this way. And the personnel that we had in the recycling department are being redeployed for other efforts, namely to assist in our code enforcement, as well as general services and cleanup efforts. They still continue to collect the waste bags, or the lawn bags, if you will. But in addition to that, they certainly find themselves with additional responsibilities these days.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a a question about the recycling and in particular, help me to understand. I understand there was a contract, not a contract, a grant from Lake County that was where the city was the grantee to cover our recycling, the cost of recycling services. And is it the case that that grant has been, the dollars, I suppose, or however they were allotted, has been transferred to GSD, since GSD is the one who has privity of contract with Republic?
Well, that's not entirely accurate, but
Okay.
if Dan Vicari or Arlene are on the line, I'll certainly let them speak to the nuances of how that's occurring now.
I'm not privy to the actual
Can-
grant. I'm sorry, this is Dan, Chairman, may I speak?
Yes, can you speak up a little loudly? I'm having trouble hearing. I don't know if others are having any trouble.
Yeah.
Just speak up just a little.
Better?
Yes, a lot better. Thank you.
Yep, sorry. So the next step after, contracting with Republic, one thing, we already did have the contract with Republic that included a variety of services, everything from picking up city facilities, parks, recycling was in there, as well as the curbside solid waste pickup. What we needed to do really is amend the agreement at GSD to take that option for the recycling. So that's been done by the Board of Commissioners at the Gary Sanitary District. The next step will be to enter into an interlocal agreement with, I believe it would be Public Works and Safety, to reimburse GSD for the cost of that contract. But like the mayor indicated, it is being done at a much lower cost, and I anticipate that the grant dollars that the county provides for recycling pickup will be adequate to both cover the mayor's continuing reallocation of those resources from the recycling department and covering the costs for the recycling at GSD with Republic.
So let me just ask a follow-up question, make sure I'm understanding this. So the city of Gary, the civil city of Gary, is in a grantee-grantor relationship with Lake County to cover the cost of recycling. Is that true?
I believe so.
So, Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, that's okay, Dan. Your question or your answer was on the right track. And so, Mr. Chairman, having served with this body before and been a member of Lake County Solid Waste District, as well as I believe Councilman Weatherspoon is now, the nuance is that all municipalities in Lake County actually receive a grant from Lake County Solid Waste District for recycling efforts. And as long as those continue, that grant continues.
So the dollars are not necessarily just given to the city of Gary, they're given, the grant, I'm trying to figure out who the grantee is. Is the grantee the city of Gary, or is it the separately governed Gary Sanitary District?
City of Gary.
Okay, so we're transferring dollars from the city of Gary to the Gary Sanitary District at some point to support the contract that the Gary Sanitary District has entered into with Republic.
A portion of them, yes, sir.
Okay.
Now,
I just want, Councilwoman Brown is recognized.
okay, thank you. I have a question because we annually do the budget for recycling and those other grants that we receive, that the city receives. And so what my concern, of course, would be is what happens when it is time for us to approve that budget, all those grant budgets, because the one for recycling is a part of those. So what happens there? Or do you know, or have you decided, or has anybody thought about it? Because we always get that budget.
Yeah, well, Councilwoman, as Dan pointed out, there is another mechanism. And so the actual transferring of those dollars hasn't occurred yet, but that's the intention, to reimburse GSD for the portion that they're now incurring in addition to what they already pickup for the waste hauling. They're going to receive a portion of those grant dollars to cover the cost of the additional price that's added to the contract.
I have a Councilwoman Brown.
Yes. I don't know. I'm okay. I'll have to see when we get the budgets for the grants, because we usually get them all at one time. For all the grant budgets, we usually get them all at one time. And recycling is always a part of it. And when I was on the Lake County Solid Waste Board before Councilman Weatherspoon, I know that there were dollars that were given to the city of Gary for recycling.
Yeah, everyone on the phone agree with that, Councilwoman. I'm not quite following the question or the point here, but what you just said is accurate.
Oh,
Well, Councilwoman Brown,
yes.
did you have something to say?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry, I saw you light up. I do have a question, because I guess my question is, at what point will that come before this body? So if the city of Gary is the grantee and Gary Sanitary District has already entered into a contract with Republic, I suppose assuming that the dollars are going to flow from the city of Gary to the sanitary district, does that come before this body for approval? And if it does, in the future, would it not be prudent to first approve it here and then enter into a contract with a third party?
Yes, so Councilman, in terms of time frame, I'm not exactly sure. I can't answer that one, but to your last point, sure, that would absolutely be the way, and that's the way that we intend to conduct business all the time. But keep in mind, this was an extraordinary situation created by something certainly that none of us foresaw. And to that extent, we had a responsibility to continue the service, certainly for our constituents, and we made the best decision that we could at that possible time without disrupting the service or incurring additional costs.
But I do know that budget has not come before us at this time. Okay, it has not come before us yet. It does not come with the regular budget, okay? It comes at a different time when all the grant budgets come. All those budgets that are grant budgets come at generally pretty much at the same time, and that's generally a part of them. So we don't have it yet, I guess is what I'm saying. We haven't had it yet. I haven't seen it yet.
That's probably accurate, Councilwoman. And I'll take your word for it that it is. But to a larger point, the service is continuing, and certainly the folks who are responsible for ensuring that all the dollars are accounted for and expended properly and resourcefully, I have confidence that they're doing so.
I would just add, and I don't want to belabor the point, but that I think it would be, I understand that there was issues with COVID-19, but recycling has been happening for a long time, and I'm not saying the current system is perfect. I know I got a lot of calls over the past 2 weeks about, now that we've moved to Republic, people's homes being skipped, the names weren't on the list, they were calling a number that nobody was answering, and we rectified those problems by getting the information out to the public. But it really would have been helpful, and I'm not trying to be, critical, I'm just kind of trying to give feedback, if we had some information on the front end of that, so that we're then prepared for the deluge of calls, right, that inevitably come. My district is a high volume, maybe the highest in the city, recycling district. And so we were overwhelmed with calls and questions and so forth. And I'm finding out in the midst of that we're under a contract. And, as a city council member, I think certainly if we have a grant that this body, the city has received, and the Gary Sanitary District, which has its own board, is entering into contracts based on our freeing up dollars for that purpose, it would really be helpful if we knew that in advance. I get as long as the services are being provided as they should be, but I think there's I plan on voting for it, obviously, because I want recycling to continue, but I think there's an assumption that's made that dollars can move within government, and this body is, we don't want to be an afterthought, is essentially what I'm saying.
Councilman Godwin, I get that as well. And Ms. Colvin will certainly recalls that when the budgets come for, grant budgets come, recycling is generally just a part of that. And so I didn't know that it was going to be different this time as well, you know, and that was my question, because I haven't seen it yet. We have not seen it. We don't do those grant budgets at the same time that we do our regular budget.
And that this will be coming to you, Councilwoman, you're right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And I would just also, I guess we have these employees who we have paid based on these grant dollars, but now that we've outsourced or privatized this under the sanitary district, I think there are some questions about where the dollars are going to come from to continue to support these employees. But I suppose we'll have that conversation soon.
Right.
Well, sure, Councilman, and there are a few assumptions being made here, but yeah, we'll absolutely share all of the nuances around this this issue with the council.
Thank you,
Mr. President, and to the mayor. I brought this up about recycling because my recycle is out now over a week in this area here, at least 2 blocks here, and we called last weekend where the city picked it up, where the public did not pick it up. So that's why I brought it up. But since it's been brought up about money being transferred and things of that nature, I'd just like to talk to you offline on some issues, because I know we do have some problems with collections in general with our waste services, and that's a whole nother animal by itself to have to tackle. But I would like to talk with you offline about that. Thank you.
Sure, Councilman, you're absolutely right, and you also are aware that that's existed for some time and what you're speaking about, and I'd love to engage you at any point you want to have that conversation. But what you're speaking about, I believe you're speaking about, is the fact that GSD has been subsidizing the garbage collection, and so you're right, there are a number of issues that exist. But you know, back to the point of this discussion in terms of recycling, and the initial concern, is it working or is it in place? The answer is yes.
Chair, I have just some additional information to address.
Mr. Vicari, can you speak up a little?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, so just to answer Councilman Brewer's original question about the missed pickup, getting back to that, if folks can dial 219-310-2307. We do apologize. Republic gave us a number originally that was their dispatch office that does not have an answering machine, and that has created some frustration, as I can imagine. But if they dial that 310-2307, they can get a live body, and if no one answers, they will leave a message. They can leave a message, and their recycling will be picked up if they leave their name and address.
And can you repeat that phone number for me really quick? You said 310-2327?
Yes.
Yeah, just for the record, Mr. Chair, if I may, one more time, I don't want anybody to leave this conversation thinking that we didn't share that with the body, but I understand all of us have, you know, various schedules, and all of you may not have received it. But when we received the complaints, obviously it warranted a call to Republic to see what was going on. Vicari did so in a very timely fashion and attained the correct call-in number for you all, and that was shared with the body as well.
Yes, and I will say that Mr. Vicari has been very helpful. I would just, you know, I think it would be great if we were, again, we're not trying to be the executive branch. I'm not trying to be the executive branch. But if we kind of knew that this was happening, that we're going to move, I know there were some questions that have been asked at prior council meetings about recycling, and I'd rather not find out in the middle of a crisis, right, that we've outsourced it. I think it would be helpful just to know, hey, council members, we're considering no longer doing this in-house. We're gonna move it over to the sanitary district and have them enter into a third-party arrangement with the public so that we're not sort of finding out decisions of government in the midst of trying to help citizens fulfill their needs. They expect that we know what's going on.
And I still want to say that that budget used to come to us toward the end of the year. I mean, it does not come at the regular time. You know, we do the budget, when we do the budget. We don't do the budget for recycling. We do that when we do, all the grant budgets are done at a different time. And I didn't want us to get confused because I had gotten calls about that. Well, what about the budget? Did you guys approve the budget for recycling? We didn't get it yet, is what I'm saying. We haven't had it yet. And Arlene understands what I'm saying.
I do.
Councilwoman, I understand exactly, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Yes, Mayor
I
Prince.
understand completely what the councilwoman is saying.
Right.
And she makes a very good point. I guess a equally salient point is that the collection is occurring and it's going to be presented to the council in a timely fashion. And I don't think that we'll have a hiccup in terms of fulfilling our obligation.
And I would only say, and I'm not going to go on with this, but I plan on voting for it. But if this council did not approve this, and we've already entered into or the GSD, the sanitary district, has entered into a private contract based on actions that we have not yet taken, what if we didn't vote for it? What then would be the result?
So, Councilman, I'm going to assume that's just a rhetorical question.
It is. But I think just going forward, it prompts my concern that actions happen and then later we're called to ratify them.
And you're exactly right, because that gets back to my point that we have not seen the grant budgets yet. And generally, recycling would be a part of the grant budget, is what I'm saying.
Mr. President, maybe I could help here, maybe.
Councilman Lay is recognized.
That contract, as all contracts, will be subject to funding. It's a precondition that it has to be funded. So if in fact it was not funded by this council, then it would cease to exist. All is based upon legislative funding. So again, I understand what the mayor has said. He moved forward to do it. When it comes before the council, we vote it down, which wouldn't make a lot of sense. But we of course, we could do that. That the contract would no longer exist. All contracts of that nature are based upon being funded by the legislative branch.
Absolutely, and I guess, I totally agree with you, Councilman Lay. It's just that we've already assumed some costs, right? We already would have had weeks of collection, so there's some expenses, I guess, that the sanitary district would have to bear those. Now, again, I fully plan on supporting it. I support recycling. I want to see it grow. I am a little concerned that we're losing control over it by it being moved to another body that we have no appointment authority, nothing to do with very much other than rate hikes with what goes on at the sanitary district. And it's something that's so central to some of the complaints that we get. The larger point is we'd rather have the dollars approved first and then the contracts entered into. And I know we've had some of these same questions arise even around employment agreements where folks are hired and then later we're going back to try to create positions. So I understand a lot of things are happening at the same time, but as much notice, as much information in advance, I think certainly would be appreciated by me and I presume by other members of the council. Again, not trying to attack, as everybody thinks it's not that at all, but we do have a fiduciary responsibility, and I think it's just good government and good order that things happen in that kind of order.
I agree, Mr. President. And I have a couple of comments away from what you're talking about, if that's permissible.
Oh, absolutely. Unless Councilman Lay is recognized.
The mayor mentioned a pledge about what Obama had said in relationship to Mr. Floyd. I think we should reduce it to a resolution, put it in writing that would be sponsored both by the council and the executive branch. and put it in writing because we may need to submit that pledge somewhere to someone to show how this city, certainly we have a complete African American electoral group, elected officials, I should say. So I think we could put that in writing would be much better. One of the suggestions I had made to the, I call myself making to the mayor as well as to the council, as I understand it, I may not have this exactly correct. I believe it was explained to me by Councilman Brewer that during the sale leaseback arrangement, there was a committee set up that was composed of members of the council. They would meet with the former mayor to discuss the financial obligation, debt, I guess, of the city. Again, I would suggest that that same type of arrangement be set up, that we, in fact, with the finance committee, the only difference, I'm suggesting that you add Councilman Brewer to do that. After you receive the various information that you sent back to the ordinance you sent back to committee, that would be the time to discuss any discrepancies. That would also be the time where the mayor could at least form the, I'm going to call it the executive branch, exactly what has happened, so we don't get into a conversation like we have today. He could, of course, have an opportunity to tell us very quickly if he's shifting something that he's going to need us to vote on it. So I'm suggesting, I've never sat in on those committee meetings. I do not desire to sit on it. I think the group that you have, in addition to Mr. Brewer, would more than satisfy this council. So I'm suggesting that same group be reestablished. Certainly will give us a better, I think, working relationship, and that we can do things without being in violation of the open door, and it can be discussed with the mayor, outside of the public. We're not trying to hide anything, but just simply would move things faster, and the council would have a better understanding of what he's doing. I think that was the purpose of the meeting under the former mayor, Karen Freeman Wilson. I think it was, but Councilman Brewer could probably explain it a lot better than I can.
You explained it what it was.
Yeah. And I'm suggesting, Mr. Mayor, that from what I know, the council is prepared to do that. I would suggest at least you try it. And if it does not work, then you, of course, you should discontinue it. But I think you should try it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Chair. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Yes, yes, Mayor Prince is recognized.
Sure, and so as Councilman Lay has stated, we certainly engaged in that conversation a little bit. I think it's a wonderful idea. However, you have to put it in the proper context. And so, typically I would wait until I have all the information before I make the next statement that I'm going to make. But, before we can establish that committee, we first have to understand exactly where we are ourselves. And at best, that's about 3 weeks out. I believe that the committee that was established before, at least, and I've had numerous discussions with the financial persons, including the former controller, obviously, and then the financial advisor who worked for the city. And what was established at that particular time was a budget. And the budget was established to say, listen, this is how much money we have. These are the bills we could pay, and these are the bills we can't pay. And the point is I'm just not certain that this body or the former body received all the information that they necessarily needed. And to that point, we're making discoveries every day. And one of which was today, I finally discovered that in 2019 alone, we paid an air conditioning company over $544,000. And so the point is we're trying to ascertain exactly where we are financially. And it sort of speaks back to the ordinance that the council passed. And as I discussed with you, Councilman Godwin, we have absolutely no intention of not sharing any information that we get. We just want to make sure that it's accurate for you as well as the constituents. And speaking with our interim controller, I believe that we're still about 3 weeks out from that, as I expressed during the last meeting. And as some of you, perhaps Councilman Brewer, is aware, is that in some instances, you know, one of the questions was how much money is in the bank, and we certainly reported that, and the interim controller has reported that. But in addition to that, you must understand also that in some instances, many of those accounts had not been reconciled in over a year, and all of those factors play into providing the most accurate information, and that's our goal. We simply want to provide you everything that's there, right? But the only way that we can do it is that we get a grasp of it ourselves, and that's what we're working towards. And I believe that we're making significant progress. It just takes a little while.
Thank you, Mayor Prince. I certainly agree with Councilman Lay's suggestion. I think it would help, you know, for the information flow between the council and the administration. And I also remember, I was obviously not a member of the body, but I did come to council meetings, that there was a lot of discussion about that particular weekly meeting that was happening. I know Councilwoman Brown, I believe Linda Barnes-Caldwell, and Councilman Brewer, if I'm not missing anybody, all participated in weekly meetings, and that was part of the financial recovery plan that was concomitant, if you will, with the sale leaseback itself. And the notion was that there was a financial recovery plan, the dollars were being expended to the city with the belief that both branches of government would govern in a collaborative way to ensure that we're able to meet our obligations and, of course, the financial health of the city. Now, I could be wrong about that, but I do recall those discussions in the committee hearings and council meetings that I attended. I don't know whether Councilman Brewer, Brown, or Barnes-Caldwell have anything to add to that.
That was the spirit of,
Brewer?
I'm sorry, Mr. President. That was the spirit of those meetings there, that we would continue to work together, especially since we had did the sale leaseback with council abreast. And it even went back to you getting whoever the president is, getting the annual reports to see exactly where we are at financially with things that are coming in. So that takes us back to where we left off from last year to now, even what you're requesting at this time, financial reports.
Mr. Chairman.
Mayor Prince is recognized.
So as you're aware, you know, towards the end, or at least the inception of the sale leaseback, this administration, before we had an opportunity to participate in that. So I'm familiar with the committee that was set up to review it. But I think a point that we absolutely need to make is that committee wasn't established until there was a discovery that there were missing, or, you know, misappropriated, I don't want to misstate it, misappropriated funds in a particular, and resources in a particular account. And then obviously came the sale leaseback, and you're right, there were provisions that the financial plan was adhered to, and that was a requirement in order for the underwriters to actually accept the deal. My point is, I'm just not so certain that that information was the most accurate information, and that's what we're discovering now. And as soon as we complete it, we are absolutely going to share it with the council as well as the public at large, because that needs to be known.
All right. And I guess to that effect, are we still planning to have a state of the city? Obviously, I know COVID has thrown a juggernaut, if you will, into a lot of our planning, but maybe that could be part of the state of the city address. And I didn't know whether that had been rescheduled or to be done virtually, or what the plan was for that.
Short answer is yes, we absolutely will have. As you all are aware, it's part of our statutory requirement. We haven't solidified a date yet, obviously, with just returning back to full operations June the 8th, but it'll definitely happen. And yeah, it's our desire to share, and it's our request requirement to share the financial state and status of the city. And so to that extent, we are eagerly anticipating our discoveries, as all of you are.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions for the mayor or administration at this time? Seeing and hearing none, that concludes our agenda for this evening. Is there a motion to dismiss?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
It's been moved and adjourned. Everyone have a good evening. Thank you.